everybody. Welcome back. In the first two videos, I talked to you about learning something together with your child, as well as the Boco Math Lifestyle that is rich with opportunities for learning math from everyday life. And today, I'm going to talk to you about numeracy and operations in algebra that come up through that Boco Math Lifestyle. Let's get started. This is Everyday Mathematics Part 3, How to Follow a Child's Curiosity to Conquer Your Math Anxiety and Help Them Succeed in Math. Today, I'm going to show you what to look for when your child accepts the invitation into mathematics, and specifically the numeracy and the operations in algebra that'll come up in a Boco Math Lifestyle. As a recap, in Part 1, I talked to you about following a child's curiosity to tackle your anxiety. And I used my example of learning about bugs. If we strengthen our relationship with the subject, done in concert with our child, everyone learns. And if you remember, I talked a lot about reading books together with my kids. You can do it about bugs, you can do it about trucks, you can do it about math. In Part 2, I talked about easy ways to invite your family into math. I talked about living a Boco Math lifestyle that creates a lot of math-rich experiences, ones that can strengthen your relationship with the subject and with your child. Okay, so you're feeling brave. You're leading a Boco Math lifestyle. Now what? Well, now it's time to take a closer look at the subject of math. These are topics that are revisited over and over again in more and more detail for many, many years. Today, I'm going to talk about numeracy, and I'll talk about operations in algebra. And in videos 4 and 5, I will talk about geometry and spatial relations, and measurement in data. I mention them now because numeracy and operations in algebra lead us into those other topics in mathematics. All right, so let's take a look at numeracy. Numeracy involves the answer to the question, how many? How many cupcakes? Let's count them. It's all about counting in these early years. And in counting, our children learn the number names, 1, 2, 3, and so on, up, 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 up. They may also start learning the numerals. So this is that visual representation of the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and so on. And as they get older, the numeracy also gets more advanced. They might start skip counting, 2, 4, 6, 8. Might start considering parts of a whole, which are the essence of fractions. And a little further on, they start learning the number system, which is place value, like the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, and so on. And even older, they learn really, 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 really big numbers and really, 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 really tiny numbers and the scientific notation we use to express those. All right, numeracy across grade levels. How many and the special numbers. So in preschool, it's all about counting. And I feel like a lot of us naturally do this with our babies and our preschoolers. And you know what? You can just keep doing it and keep doing it as they get older and older. The numbers get bigger and more complex. And that is all wonderful numeracy learning. The beginners, they're counting higher, right? They count to 10, and then they count to 20, and then they count to 100, and then to 1,000, and higher and higher and higher. They also begin examining groups within groups, like a group of 2 and a group of 3 put together equals 5. Also start, and part of that is fractions, 2/5 and 3/5. Intermediate learners are starting to look at special cases like prime numbers, positive and negative numbers, irrational numbers. And advanced learners really start digging into the applied and situational numbers, which are like learning how many degrees are in shapes and geometry. Or they start learning about very, very special numbers like pi, or imaginary numbers, I. And then also the situational piece, statistics. Numeracy in life. Okay, so I'll talk to you about a couple of the Boco Math Lifestyle things that have a lot of numeracy, a lot of counting. So time management, which is counting on clocks and calendars. How many seconds in a minute, how many minutes in an hour, how many hours in the day, how many days in the week, how many weeks in the month, how many months in the year, and how many years they've been alive. There's just so much counting. It's crazy. And you can count forward or you can count backward. Like how many days until your birthday, right? So in preschool, counting on clocks is kind of tangible. You can buy little toy clocks and they can move the hands around and feel it tick, tick, tick. 1, 2, 3. The beginner learners, they can start moving from the tangible and feeling how that clock goes, or looking at that calendar and counting the number of days in the month, and think a little bit more intangibly and do some reasoning with you, just verbally talking about it in the car on the way someplace. Intermediate learners can use numeracy to make plans. Like, okay, this is what's coming up this week. How can we make plans so that we get to do all of the fun things this week? And advanced planning is planning for years. This is where kids they look out and say, oh, college is coming. I need to plan backwards from that. And all of this planning, I mean, there's a lot of counting involved here, but it falls straight into operations and algebra and all of the reasoning and all of the figuring out that comes from operations and algebra. The other place where we see a ton of numeracy in life is going outdoors. Counting plants, animals, clouds, and other outdoor stuff. So in preschool, this is, again, very, very tangible. They can literally go start picking the dandelions out of the yard and pick those. Or they can start picking up all the rocks and sorting them by size or color. Beginning learners can do sorting within sorting. Intermediate learners might start looking at patterns over time. So weather is a really common thing that we consider over time, but also if you're into gardening, you can watch how things grow over time and things like that. And advanced learners use all of these numbers to make estimates and predictions about the future. And this, as you can probably hear, is that it's all about measurement and data. So numeracy in life comes a lot from the time management piece of Boco Math Lifestyle, as well as the getting outdoors part of the Boco Math Lifestyle. And doing these things kind of places the pebbles down toward more complicated but very important math learning, like operations and algebra and measurement and data. All right, so let's look at operations and algebra. It's a very short leap from counting into operations and algebra. I mean, the minute you start skip counting, you're getting toward multiplication. So operations are about combining groups of things or breaking them apart. So adding and subtracting. So adding is combining groups of things, And subtraction is taking them apart or making them smaller. Multiplication, combining groups of things. Division, breaking them apart. And then there are variations on that when you get into more advanced math, where you start using exponents and integrals and derivatives and stuff like that. But at the very essence, we got to get that addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division kind of in our bodies and know what they're representing and how they work. Algebra is about making comparisons, figuring stuff out, and making substitutions. So the comparisons are like, are these two things the same? If they're not the same, which one is bigger and which one is smaller? Figuring stuff out is something like, let's go shopping. You have $10 to spend. Let's figure out if you can afford to buy the 2 toys you want. And making substitutions, well, this happens a lot in pretend play when we're characters and we use a stick as a sword, but also in making substitutions when we're baking, things like that. Across the grade levels, operations in algebra might look like this. In preschool, combining groups of things is addition. Sharing, subtraction. And also maybe starting to learn some of the numerals, right? Little tiny kids are really good at thinking in pictures, and numerals are very special pictures. Beginning learners start skip counting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 3, 6, 9, 12, and 5, 10, 15, 20. Those are the nickels. 10, 20, 30, 40. Those are the dimes. And also, they should start getting a feel for how it feels to write the numerals and the operators down to represent what they did. So if they have one Hot Wheels car and their friend has 2 Hot Wheels cars, they could write down 1 plus 2 equals 3. Or you could write it down for them, especially if they're still having a hard time with that pencil to paper thing or crayon to paper thing. Intermediate learners have to start writing to figure things out more. So they have less opportunities to play with blocks or toys or whatever to figure things out. And they have to start practicing writing to figure the things out and learning different combinations of operations to figure out answers. But that's way down the road. Same thing with advanced learners. There's more writing and more complicated combinations. But for our young learners, really, it's all about getting that visceral understanding and then encouraging them maybe to write down the numerals and the operators and just get a feel for how that stuff all works. Writing ideas down using math symbols is crux. And when I taught community college students, it was one of my biggest challenges was to get them to just write the math symbols on the paper. And so I'd like to encourage you that when there's an opportunity, have your kid or do it for them, write the symbols down on the paper so they get a sense for how that writing can support their math figuring out. Let's look at operations in algebra in life. Money management, accumulating and spending money. And I don't know about you, but my kids were ready to figure that stuff out at a very early age. 3, I think they started wanting to buy stuff when they were 3 years old. So let's see. In preschool, they can count coins and start learning some skip counting. Pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, $1 bills and $5 bills. And of course, you know your kids best. Don't let them eat the coins. Beginning learners start getting a feel for saving and spending, and how the money is tied to something that they want. And I mean, what an amazing motivator for learning anything is wanting something. Intermediate learners start using algebra to plan the savings for a big ticket item. And again, this is where I'd encourage you to write down as much as you can. Even if it doesn't look quite right, just start writing the numbers down and some of those symbols to make plans for how to save for a big ticket item. My kid right now is trying to save for a VR headset. That's a really big ticket item. And advanced learners will be doing compound interest. And, you know, you could probably go to a bank and have somebody try to explain this to your kid if you don't get it, because I've found that people who know a lot about things are generally passionate about it and really, 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 really excited to talk to interested kids. All right, music is symbolic thinking. In preschool, this is clapping and banging drums and dancing around and things like that. And with clapping and banging drums and dancing around, they start to feel that beat and that counting. And then, as beginning learners, they might start learning the symbols for different notes as they correspond to keys on a keyboard or some other instrument, or as the beats when they are clapping their hands, like how fast or how slow to clap their hands together. Intermediate and advanced learners in music start learning different combinations of symbols and how those things go together. And that is very, very, very reminiscent to me of the more advanced algebra that they will have to be doing eventually. So our job is to provide math experiences with the Boco Math Lifestyle, notice math as it emerges, and talk about it using math words. So I hope this has kind of helped you know what math is going to emerge. So numeracy, like numbers and counting, and operations and algebra that come up, adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing, and also making comparisons and figuring stuff out and using those math words together with your child. So let's see. Let's talk about the numeracy and operations in algebra. In numeracy, ask how many, and then just learn all the numbers. In operations in algebra, say, let's figure it out. That is one of the most important things in math and in life and in learning, is saying, let's figure it out. And make comparisons, more than, less than, equal to. Combine, group, and count things higher, and use words like add and multiply to do those things. And when you separate things, use words like subtract or divide. And if you want more or reminders, you can find a lot of these words in children's books. And I have a huge collection of children's books on my website that you can go and find out, or just shoot me a note and ask if I have a good recommendation for a topic you want to learn more about, because I do, I promise. Or I can figure it out. So that was Everyday Mathematics Part 3. I talked about numeracy and operations in algebra that emerge from a Boco Math Lifestyle. Next, I'll talk about geometry and spatial relations. So there you have it. That was Part 3 of Everyday Mathematics. And in the next video, I'll talk to you about geometry and spatial relations that come up in the Boco Math Lifestyle. See you next time. Thanks for watching.